Hello, and welcome to this Mover and Shaker interview for Juniper Research's Future Digital Awards programme. And I'm here today talking to the winner of our Platinum Award for Digital Identity Innovation, Mastercard. And for that, I'm joined by Chris Reid, who is Executive Vice President of Identity Solutions at Mastercard. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Nick. Nice to meet you. Thanks very much for having me.
Great. And what an interesting topic this is to be talking about today. Today, we're talking about the whole area of identity fraud and scams. And this is such an active market right now. I know Mastercard is very active in this market right now. So I'm really interested to hear about your view on this space. So let's jump straight into the topic. And let's start with, I think, is a really interesting question, is what changes is Mastercard seeing in the way scammers are trying to exploit victims?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Nick, what we're seeing is a huge surge in scams, and that really is a global phenomenon. In the US, according to the FBI, last year, 2023, we saw a 22% year-over-year growth in consumer scam losses. In the UK, fraudsters were responsible for nearly 1.4 million thefts during the first half of 2023. That's the equivalent of one every 12 seconds. And so what we're seeing within those scams is purchase scams, so thinking you're buying something and you're not. In the UK, that's now more than half of scams. Investment scams are amongst the most costliest, according to the FTC over here in the UK. And, as more people are embracing real-time payments, the account-to-account payment scams are really growing rapidly, referred to as authorized push payment fraud. So again, in the UK, that accounts for 40% of all UK bank fraud losses. And, those statistics are truly awful, which is why we have a passion. But we also know, Nick, that those are just the crimes that are reported. Where this is somewhat unique is, the impact of the victim is different. It is much greater than traditional payment fraud. Because by the nature of its name, the victim has actually sent money to the fraudster. The victim was very active in this crime. And so what we know is many victims are either too ashamed or they're just afraid to come forward. And so, that growing threat of scams that we've seen, the growing awareness and fear of them, it is really putting our financial institution customers under real pressure. 77% of consumers worldwide believe that their banks should be offering a better protection against scams. And so, the stakes for businesses and consumers alike couldn't be higher now. And that's why we're taking a multi-pronged approach to fighting scams. So that's really the changes and the momentum in the wrong direction we've seen over the last 12, 18 months now.
Really interesting stuff and really scary stuff, actually.
Yes.
I think as an observer of this market as well, some of the shifts we've seen have been so dramatic, particularly into this APP
really
area, that it's just so significant that we're seeing right now.
Correct.
But thinking about one of the biggest developments that is being talked about in the industry right now is really artificial intelligence and what role that has. And therefore, what do you see the role for AI being? And this is both in actually preventing fraud, but also at the hands of scammers, because I think this is a really important debate that's going on right now.
Yes. Yeah, look, you described it just there as the statistics, the momentum is really scary. We should all be worried. If we can't have faith in the digital economy, it is not going to be an enabler for growth and commerce of all shapes and sizes. And really, what is driving that is the scammers embracing the sophisticated technologies like AI to deceive their victims. Scams these days are incredibly convincing. And so that leaves us all all of us more vulnerable, whether we're victims or not. And so, on the other hand, we know that AI can be used for good. And in fact, at Mastercard, we've been using AI for the better part of the last decade. And it's now foundational technology used across our business. And it's been a game changer in helping to identify patterns in fraud. It allows us and our customers to move way beyond the rule-based decisioning framework of if this, then that. And where you get to with an AI-driven solution and model is you get a much greater degree of accuracy. You get it much more timely. Thinking again about the scams for decades, really, the crime we had to worry about in payment fraud was really somebody who isn't you pretending to be somebody else, whether that was a piece of plastic that might have been lost or stolen or counterfeit or the same online. What we're now looking for is it is you. We're just looking to detect those anomalies in behavior, whether payment behavior or otherwise. So AI, as I mentioned, it's really foundational technology for us. In the last year alone, our AI-powered security solutions have stopped over 20 billion in fraud losses. And those, it really is the advancement of those that we've launched into our suite of specialized solutions, particularly to identify and prevent scams.
Yeah, really interesting summary of how some of the changes have been happening with AI. And I think we're sort of in this weird place where actually there's a lot known about AI and it's actually been used in a lot of sectors. But in other ways, we're just scratching the surface. So I think it's such an interesting one that we're going to see a lot more developments on going forward. But what we've talked about so far is actually, all about the challenges within fraud prevention and how these stats are very scary, how there's a highly active scammer base across a lot of different countries. I think really it'd be interesting to hear, based on that, how is Mastercard meeting those challenges within fraud prevention? What's Mastercard's key approach to this challenge?
Yeah, so I love this question. Thank you for asking it. And it's around digging into the tech. And so our AI-based solutions range from biometric and identity solutions to real-time transaction decisioning scores. And when we combine those, we believe we're truly offering a compelling anti-scam layer of protection to both financial institutions, our bank customers, and their consumers. So, if we start with the beginning of a digital journey, it starts with the beginning of a relationship, that account opening. Scammers open or take over new accounts to fraudulently apply for credit, create these so-called mule bank accounts or a drop bank account. And that's to receive stolen funds or to impersonate someone using a false or a synthetic identity. And so what our identity capabilities are doing is they're verifying that someone is who they say they are throughout the life cycle of that account, the account opening. And we're stopping scammers from opening accounts with that false or that collage of synthetic identity data, or taking over a genuine person's account. So the second layer is at the point of an account to account or a card-based payment. But in this context, it's really account to account is initiated. Our behavioral biometrics of how a consumer is using the device can be a mobile phone, it could be a laptop or a desktop. What we're looking to assess is those physical interactions across the devices to identify any unusual behavior. Now, that could be because you're being coached, and so there are pauses between you needing to do something and doing it, which is someone on the end of the phone. The scammer is coaching you or in terrible, nefarious or coercing you. To you're not as confident as you normally are when making a transaction. And so we're looking for a set of signals that we know we have to be looking for, that is getting into a micro layer of insight into there might be something going on with your behavior due to the way you're interacting with the website or the app. With the account-to-account payments, we have a really good solution. It's called Consumer Fraud Risk. And this provides the banks with intelligence to detect and prevent scams in real time. And this solution is now live in the UK with 10 large banks. It leverages AI and our unique views on scams and mule behavior. And as I mentioned, that real time is so incredibly important because the money is being sent in real time. And so what we're doing is we're giving banks the opportunity to intervene, to stop a payment to a criminal before the funds are sent and to engage their consumers in a dialogue. And, when a consumer also is initiating an account-to-account payment from their bank account, our open banking solutions are also confirming the account ownership and validate the identity details of where it's going to. So, that I've just run through a variety of solutions, and that's deliberate. Unfortunately, there is no single silver bullet to detecting and stopping scams. It is it's a multi-layered approach of insights at various points of the customer journey, and then the connection between all of that and bringing it together. Ultimately, it's to stop the consumer doing something they want to do. And that's why it's so difficult.
Yeah, some really interesting insights there in terms of that multi-layered approach, which I think is really useful for where the market is right now in terms of detecting those different signals. Yes. I think that is potentially the answer to the next question. But we hear a lot from lots of different fraud prevention vendors, and it is a pretty competitive market in terms of, our solutions can prevent 99% of fraud, or they have this success rate, or what. So in that context, where there is so much competition, what makes Mastercard unique? What is that killer capability?
Yeah. And your context for that, Nick, is completely accurate. There's just a proliferation of statistics and data being communicated, and so I focused on the technology and our AI capabilities before, but I always argue, technology without just a world-class implementation, it's a bit like a one-handed clap. Could have been great, but it wasn't, right? And so we know partnerships across the ecosystem are critical in fighting scams and protecting consumers. I do not believe any single entity is going to provide the optimum solution alone. We mentioned before how scams are becoming more complex. It's a growing problem. We have to collaborate with other organizations to tackle them, in my view. And that's why. So we've teamed up with NatWest, a very large financial institution in the UK, Verizon, one of the largest leading telco company in the US, and the Global Anti-Scam Alliance to fight these scams. So, with NatWest, we're working with, as I mentioned, 10 large banks there. NatWest are one. We're using large-scale payment data to help identify those scams before the funds leave the victim's account. We've been working with banks really for the past several years, also looking at scammed funds and where they move through the financial ecosystem through these so-called mule accounts to disguise them and to get them out of the system. And so we've been working with all of the banks, because the fraudsters will move their money across institutions. What we've been able to do is we've helped kind of provide the connection points and the linkages. And so based on those insights from the tracing activity and overlaying them with specific analysis, we get to understand the payee links to accounts associated with scams. And that's what we're looking at, and that gets in there. And so Verizon, a fraudster has to communicate with the victim, and oftentimes it is via the phone. And so we're building on what has been a very valued and long-standing partnership with Verizon here in the US to fight these scams. Specifically, we're working on building new solutions to more accurately block scammers and detect them using our identity insights combined with our kind of the technologies we have, as well as Verizon's capabilities. We all receive phone calls and texts, every day, Nick, that we don't recognize. And some of those, many of those are going to be coming from scammers trying to build a relationship or coerce us into sending accounts. And so with Verizon, we want to stop scammers from initiating that contact in the first place. And outside of the US, we're in discussions with other telcos in terms of collaborating on new solutions there. And so we've developed partnerships with what we call them our channel partners. So this is around how does a financial institution get access to these solutions as simply as possible. And so we've got a really good partnership with Intersect. They're a global financial authentication company, uses our Mastercard identity solutions to, again, help financial institutions who will use the Intersect stack. Using the behavioral biometrics, banks can step up higher risk transactions. They can verify the sender. They can also potentially send a message to the receiving bank. And that extra step is just protecting senders before they leave, the funds leave the account. Finally, those three are around, maybe for want of a better term, things that for a consumer are behind the curtain. We're also partnered with the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. And, really what we're partnering with them to just drive consumer awareness campaigns to educate consumers. I go back to, we said it's becoming incredibly sophisticated. It is. And so as well as what goes on behind the scenes to help consumers, there really is an opportunity to educate all of us. For those of us who are living this, we have the privilege, we've got the advantage, I think, of being a little bit more aware and a little bit more knowledgeable. But whether it's a parent, a spouse, a family member, a son or a daughter, or just a friend, we know they don't have that element of knowledge. And so the consumer awareness campaigns with the Global Anti-Scam Alliance are going to be really important for us there.
Yeah, a really interesting summary. And I really enjoyed that it was very light on statistics. So very much enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But no, great to hear about that unique approach that Mastercard is taking. And I think, this has been a great conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. I think to wrap us up, I'd like you to get out the crystal ball and really think about the future of the market and really ask you, what do you see the future of online fraud as? We've seen so many changes from card present to card not present to account takeover fraud to APP with real-time payment systems. Where are we headed next?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to profess to have a crystal ball, and you use the term, it'd be a scary crystal ball. But I do think there are several trends, and we've spoken about them a bit, that are likely to shape the landscape going forward. As technology advances, and AI will be a big part of that, but as other technology advances, so too will the techniques of fraudsters and the capabilities of fraudsters. The bad actors, the criminals, are going to continue to evolve, Nick. Every single day in every financial institution, there are tens of thousands of people around the world doing everything they can to understand how fraudsters are behaving and to stop it. And so they're targeting those emerging technologies. I think identity theft, I think social engineering attacks are going to become more sophisticated. But our tools are also to prevent them and to protecting them are becoming more sophisticated. So I think one of the things we're going to see potentially is the value of a crime may actually increase because if you think about fraud is a business and it's a significant business. And fraudsters are looking for, and they will have a target return on investment, an ROI, in the same way that legitimate businesses have. And so if a fraudster is using more advanced technology, that's likely going to be more expensive for them. So I think what we're going to see is, particularly in APP fraud, the value of the loss, the value of the specific crime, likely getting higher as it costs criminals more to be successful. Now that's terrible because you begin to get into real financial ruin for consumers, and that's why that again I think I said this at the beginning. That's why we have a passion for this. We are and we will continue to invest in developing those advanced both anti-fraud and anti-scam solutions, because the direction of travel is going to get more dangerous for society, more adverse impacts for consumers. And so, if we are investing more, if we're driving consumer education and awareness, and that's critically important, as I mentioned, I think we're going to be empowering individuals and organizations in the digital economy to be vigilant, to be able to recognize, mitigate, and report the online crime. So unfortunately, my summary is, I think it's going to continue to be a competition between bad actors and good actors. And I know from speaking to our valuable customers, we're all committed to win this competition. We're going to do whatever it takes.
Well, a reassuring positive note to end on. So
yeah,
I appreciate that. I think this is a topic we could talk about all day.
Yes.
There are just so many facets to this, but we've got to call it there. So all that's left for me to say is thank you, Chris, today for your insights. It's been really interesting speaking to you. And that's it from us now.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for the opportunity again, Nick. Take care.
Thank you.